For more on the latest finance and market news, we're joined now by Suzanne Haddan, who is the Managing Director at BFG Financial Services. Suzanne, always great to have you on the program. Let's talk about unemployment figures, because this week they were released and we saw them rise this week. What did the figures tell us and what did they not tell us? Because it didn't really paint the full picture.
Yeah, that's an important point. They didn't rise as much as one would expect at only 0.1, and that's because of a thing called the participation rate. That's the number of people actually looking for employment. That number concerningly reduced as people gave up looking for work. And the job losses, again, not surprising, were in New South Wales and Victoria. Concerningly, most of the job losses were part-time workers, which actually affects women in a more significant proportion than the male counterpart. So that's a big concern.
Yeah, I want to go into that a bit more. Women are more represented in these unemployment figures. Why is that?
Well, women make up a significant portion of the part-time workers, and we're all for equal care in the home and equal duties at home, but they still appear to provide most of the caring responsibilities. And remembering we've had the dreaded homeschooling for many months, and eventually someone has to be there. Little people aren't disciplined enough to sit in front of that screen for some hours. So people have had to also opt out and couldn't get to work. Also, they work in a lot of the service sectors. Think retail, hairdressing, beauty, where they're actually close to people, and those areas were actually shut down. So whether you wanted to go to work wasn't the point. You couldn't go to work, and so that certainly affected women. But there are some good news points in the sense of, you look at Seek, one of the big employment people, they on their website for us as employers are saying, candidates are cautious. We're getting less demand for jobs. So I'm hoping as people become more comfortable out of lockdown, we'll see more people getting back on their feet. And certainly for us, it's not in my DNA to recommend spending, but assuming you can afford it, it'll be great to get back out, spend, get into using cafes, tourism to help your fellow Australians get back on their feet.
Well, we have seen a relaxation in the rules in New South Wales. Do we have any indication at this early stage, at least on a macro level, of the impact of that? And as Fauziah was saying, oil prices jumped to a 3-year high due to an expected demand in a surge for jet fuel with the US borders opening up. We also had an announcement yesterday about the international borders opening up for Sydney, at least from November 1. Have we seen any reaction to that?
Well, certainly if you look at the stock market, you've seen some great returns from the travel stocks. So that gives you one idea. It's also whether people are going to be confident to open their wallets. We know there's a lot of pent-up demand. We know there's significant, on a macro level, significant savings. So there's money there to spend, and certainly the feedback's been great enthusiasm to get into flights, to get around, see family overseas as well as internally in state. So that's a positive. One of the issues for the recovery is also about being able to buy goods, because we're seeing around the world a slowdown in shipping, becoming more expensive. So even when you want to get goods, you might not have them on the shelves, and that could be a negative for our recovery.
This week, Suzanne, two of the big banks, Westpac and Commonwealth Bank, have said that they will require staff to be fully vaccinated, while NAB and ANZ have stopped short of mandating that. What are we seeing, especially from big businesses, on the topic of mandating vaccines? Are more people heading down that path?
It does seem to be that more people are heading down that path, and that's a reflection. A lot of these big companies have done in-house surveys, and the in-house surveys suggest people want the mandate. Again, not surprising. If the majority of people are vaccinated, they're unlikely to want to be encouraging sitting next to the unvaccinated. So those results aren't surprising. But employers are still concerned about how to deal with some of the exemptions, the medical exemptions, and what are their responsibilities with the unvaccinated. Do we just have to keep them at home because the vaccinated don't want them in the office? And is that fair? So there's still a lot of challenges.
Just finally, climate talks have been going on within the coalition this week. There's no decision yet on a net zero target for 2050, although that is expected to come shortly, especially with the Prime Minister confirming that he will attend the Glasgow Climate Summit. Taking the politics out of it, what is it that business actually needs here?
Well, they absolutely need clarity. We need to know what the emission reduction targets are going to be. We need to know the framework and the policies of how we're going to get there. It's still, of course, a planet issue, but it's become a pocket issue. And that's why you're seeing business get more vocal, get more on board. What's happening is, think about global institutions, investors, big super funds. They are saying what is happening in Australia because they have mandates. They assess whether they're going to invest in Australia based on a whole range of criteria, and one of those is what is the policy on climate change, but more broadly on a concept called ESG, environmental, social and governance issues. We're seeing in research reports, just on a general managed fund, the research is looking at how are they sustainable? What are they doing for climate? What are they doing for social and governance? You just can't escape it. Also, we're seeing the regulatory authorities increase their activity. ASIC, for example, one of their major projects is to look at how can the disclosures on climate change be consistent and comparable so investors can understand what's going on there. And again, we hope it's because of the planet, but it's often because of the financial risks. And also APRA are looking for banks. Are they vulnerable to these risks? Because is their security for property in some areas going to be devalued? Are companies going to have a problem with their revenue if they're not on board? So you just simply can't escape it. And the Reserve Bank is reinforcing that fact.
Suzanne Haddan, it's always great to have you on the program. Thanks very much for your time this morning.
Thank you.